Mistress frames pregnant wife to force a divorce, but the millionaire loves his wife even more. Betrayal can hide behind the brightest smiles, threatening to tear apart even the strongest bonds. In a world where trust is tested by secrets and ambition, one wealthy family's happiness stands on the edge of a razor. Far from the glitz of paparazzi flashes and social media illusions, this is a story drenched in raw emotions, love, fear, and desperation. While a devoted wife clings to her vows and the child she carries, a cunning mistress orchestrates a ruthless plan to pry the husband away at any cost. Here, seduction and deception collide, forging a tempest that no one sees coming. High above the sweeping skyline of Beverly Hills, in a penthouse that glittered with marble floors and crystal chandeliers, a power couple reigned supreme. Joshua Morrisson, a dashing millionaire in his early 30s, had built his fortune through investment ventures, emerging as a respected name among elites. His wife, Lydia Morrisson, was a graceful woman with an artistic spirit. She had once been a gallery curator before love swept her into Joshua's breathtaking but demanding life. Their residence, perched on the edge of a cliff, was more fortress than home. Floor-to-ceiling windows presented a panorama of twinkling city lights, an empire reflecting Joshua's success. Yet despite all the grandeur, a private pool, an in-house cinema, a wine cellar stocked with rare vintages, the real treasure for Joshua was not the material wealth, but Lydia. She was everything he admired, gentle, understanding, and with a refreshing humility that set her apart from the usual crowd of social climbers. Their union, though envied, was not immune to scrutiny. Rumors circulated that Joshua's wealth overshadowed Lydia's identity. Insidious whispers claimed she was merely a decorative figure, floating behind a powerful man's achievements. But those close to them, real friends like Michael Thompson, the kind-hearted lawyer from Boston who handled Joshua's legal affairs, or Lily Chen, a wealthy philanthropist who saw through the social facade, understood the couple's genuine bond. Lydia's input in art acquisitions and charitable events played a significant role in shaping Joshua's public image. Each detail, from the curated sculptures in their penthouse to the philanthropic galas they hosted, bore Lydia's touch. The pair held a synergy that made them stand out. As evening fell on a hot summer day, the Morrisons hosted an intimate dinner for a select group of influential people. Amid the laughter, the clink of champagne glasses, and the hum of sophisticated conversation, Lydia felt faint. She excused herself politely and retreated to the master bedroom. This was not the first time she'd felt a wave of dizziness. Over the past few weeks, she had suspected something life-altering was happening to her. That night, after the guests had departed, Lydia finally told Joshua the news. She was pregnant. Relief and euphoria flooded Joshua's expression as he pulled her close. He had wanted to be a father for a long time, but in their busy lives, it always seemed like the perfect moment was just out of reach. Now, with the promise of new life stirring within Lydia, he felt his world shift in a way that even the heftiest business deals never could. Still, beneath the surface, cracks were forming. While Lydia's pregnancy stirred hope in Joshua's heart, it also turned an unrelenting spotlight on their private life. A shadowy figure watched their every move, determined to transform their joy into heartbreak. For the moment, Joshua and Lydia were unaware of the peril swirling around them, or of how that dinner party marked the beginning of a slow, treacherous unraveling. Their circle buzzed with excitement about the pregnancy. Michael Thompson offered early congratulations, while Lily Chen promised to organize a baby shower. The city itself seemed to glow a little brighter with the news of an heir to the Morrisson legacy. What Lydia and Joshua did not know was that not all their acquaintances celebrated their happiness. A woman named Vanessa Pierce, once an event organizer, now consumed by her own illusions of grandeur, had woven herself into Joshua's life months ago in a way neither Lydia nor Joshua suspected. Skilled at blending into the background while hosting opulent events for Joshua's charity, Vanessa had skillfully kept her distance until she decided she wanted more. Covetous whispers and cunning glances set the stage. The mistress had her claws out, determined to sabotage Joshua's marriage and claim him for herself. In the quiet corners of that shimmering penthouse, a storm was brewing, powerful, destructive, and cunning. The seeds of betrayal had been sown, waiting for just the right moment to sprout into chaos. Lydia's pregnancy would not be the only new thing shaping their future. Vanessa Pierce entered the Morrisons' orbit under the guise of polished sophistication. She had flawless posture, a striking sense of style, and eyes that sparkled with secret ambition. She was not from old money. Her success as an event organizer for large-scale charity balls had elevated her status considerably, but the glitz masked a darker side. Where Lydia's warmth flowed naturally, Vanessa's charm was calculated an instrument honed to captivate the wealthy and influential. Working as the lead coordinator for one of the Morrisons' biggest fundraisers, Vanessa stood out. Her attention to detail and adeptness at handling social situations impressed Joshua so much that he invited her to manage subsequent events. Little by little, Vanessa became an integral part of Joshua's philanthropic efforts. She lingered after meetings to ask about his business expansions, praising his every decision. She dissected his lifestyle, from dietary preferences to philanthropic aims, to position herself as indispensable. Her tactics extended beyond the professional sphere. She cast sideward glances and made gestures that seemed inconsequential but were packed with underlying meaning. Perhaps the first time Joshua truly noticed her was during a post-event cocktail party. He had been discussing the future of a community arts center with city council members, and Vanessa arrived to replenish his drink right as he finished praising her organizational prowess. She touched his shoulder softly, just enough to spark a fleeting moment of connection. At the time, Joshua thought nothing of it, but the seeds of her intentions had been planted. As the months progressed, Vanessa found reasons to text or call Joshua at odd hours. Urgent updates about upcoming charity events, last-minute changes that supposedly demanded immediate attention. Each conversation, while framed in professional language, veered into personal territory. How lonely she felt organizing massive galas with no partner by her side. How she admired men who achieved success through their own diligence, her personal hardships that only someone like Joshua, ambitious, driven, and misunderstood, could comprehend. All the while, Lydia was preoccupied with her blossoming pregnancy. Her mornings began with bouts of nausea and ended with her reading up on prenatal care. While she had full trust in Joshua, she sometimes wondered about Vanessa's presence. She had noticed the extended late-night calls, the text messages that made Joshua frown with confusion or mild concern. Yet each time Lydia gathered the courage to ask, Joshua's answer was invariably benign. It's about the event, or she's just under stress. He always assured Lydia that Vanessa was a key part of their philanthropy team and that there was nothing more. But the uneasy feeling never quite left Lydia. Something about the way Vanessa lingered at the edges of their life felt intrusive, like a crow perched on the windowsill, watching, waiting. Vanessa, for her part, was more cunning than anyone suspected. She did not simply want a fling or a fleeting affair. She saw Joshua as the golden ticket to a lifestyle she had only glimpsed from the outside. When she learned Lydia was pregnant, instead of stepping back, she pressed forward. In her twisted mind, a pregnant wife posed an even greater obstacle. Soon, Rumors trickled through the grapevine, snippets of gossip about how Lydia might not be good for Joshua's reputation, how she was overshadowing him with her demands, how the pregnancy was straining their marriage. Vanessa fanned those rumors carefully, always making sure they reached the right ears. She painted the portrait of a loving friend, worried about the well-being of the couple. All the while, she slid a little closer to Joshua's side, offering a comforting shoulder when he appeared exhausted or distracted by the demands of his new role as father-to-be. Michael Thompson, ever the devoted family friend, noticed subtle shifts in Joshua. Perhaps it was a faraway look during dinner or a flustered phone call that ended abruptly whenever others were present. Michael chose to keep an open mind, but a seed of caution sprouted within him. He advised Lydia to rest and not stress about small things. Yet he also vowed to keep a watchful eye on the fringes of their circle. Vanessa's ploy was not yet fully formed. She was patient, content to build tension slowly. Her eyes shone with determination whenever she observed Lydia and Joshua's affectionate displays, or overheard the updates about Lydia's pregnancy. Vanessa's envy had begun to morph into something more volatile: desperation. The game in her mind was already set in motion. Now, all she needed was a moment of vulnerability, one slip from the wife or the husband to strike. During the early months of her pregnancy, Lydia found herself suspended between soaring joy and unsettling anxiety. Pregnancy brought physical discomfort, the swell of her belly, the fatigue, and the odd cravings at 3 a.m. Yet it also lit a deep glow within her. She often found herself daydreaming about the future, a precious crib in the nursery, the gentle squeal of a newborn, the quiet satisfaction of building a life with Joshua as doting parents. At the same time, Lydia was attuned to the subtle changes in her husband's behavior. Since discovering they were expecting, Joshua had seemed even more protective. He insisted on the best prenatal care money could buy, from advanced ultrasounds to specialized nutrition plans. In public, he held her hand every chance he got, often bragging about becoming a father to anyone who would listen. Lydia adored him for that. She felt that their love was reaching a new depth. However, the memory of Vanessa Pierce's figure, weaving in and out of their gatherings, lingered in the back of Lydia's mind. In moments of introspection, she replayed small details, like how Vanessa would lean just a bit too close to Joshua when discussing event plans, or how she appeared conveniently whenever Joshua seemed stressed, offering to take care of anything he needed. Lydia tried to chalk it up to paranoia, a side effect of pregnancy hormones that magnified her insecurities. Nonetheless, there was an intangible tension that she couldn't entirely dismiss. Her concern grew so acute that she sought her mother's advice. Lydia's mother, Charlotte Green, was an old-fashioned but perceptive woman living in Santa Barbara. Over warm tea one weekend, Lydia admitted her doubts. "Mom, I sense this woman wants something more from Joshua than just organizing events. I'm afraid of sounding jealous or hormonal. He hasn't done anything suspicious, but I can't shake this feeling." Charlotte listened carefully, her brow furrowed in concern. She pressed a reassuring hand over Lydia's. "Sweetheart, you have every right to protect your family, but be cautious. You don't want to push Joshua away with baseless accusations, especially now. Look for real evidence or find a calm way to share your feelings. It's better to face these concerns together than to let them fester." Encouraged by her mother's words, Lydia mulled over how best to approach Joshua. Confrontation was not her style. She prided herself on approaching things rationally and empathetically. So instead of leveling accusations, she decided to do something constructive. She reached out to Michael Thompson, who had known Joshua for years and had the vantage point of being a trusted friend and legal advisor. Michael was polite yet cautious when Lydia mentioned Vanessa. He confirmed that Vanessa seemed very enthusiastic and overly invested in Joshua's success. But Michael had never seen Joshua behave in a way that suggested an affair. "Joshua loves you and the baby," Michael assured. "He talks about it constantly. I think Vanessa's interest is borderline invasive, but so far your husband has kept it strictly professional." Although somewhat comforted, Lydia remained uneasy. The unpredictability of Vanessa's intentions weighed on her. At times, Lydia blamed herself. Perhaps, if she were more involved in Joshua's business and philanthropic activities, she would have recognized how things were shifting. But with pregnancy came fatigue, and her focus had naturally shifted inward on the new life forming within her. Determined not to let her fears erode her marriage, Lydia planned a surprise trip for Joshua, a weekend getaway to San Francisco. She wanted a chance for them to reconnect, to stroll along the bay, savor good food, and discuss their future away from the demands of high society. Joshua agreed immediately, touched by her thoughtfulness. He rescheduled a series of meetings, including one with Vanessa, to set aside the time. For a moment, it seemed as if love had triumphed over suspicion. In the open air of the Golden Gate Bridge and the taste of fresh sourdough from old bakeries, Lydia felt the tension lift. They laughed about baby names, jokes about how the baby would inherit Joshua's stubbornness and Lydia's creativity. And in those days, Lydia thought perhaps her mother was right, that open communication could keep them safe. But the seeds of Vanessa's plan were still growing. The respite in San Francisco was only a lull before the storm. While Lydia savored fleeting relief, Vanessa was strategizing back in Beverly Hills, analyzing every detail of Joshua's schedule and connections. She was on a mission to find the perfect angle for her scheme. All she needed was a single opportunity, a single weak point, to tear down Lydia's world. Returning from San Francisco, Lydia and Joshua stepped off the private jet feeling rejuvenated. The short holiday had rekindled their bond, yet the world they came back to was the same high society labyrinth of expectations and pretenses. Their penthouse glowed under the California sun, but a heavy air pervaded the halls. Within days, the usual bustle of their life resumed. Joshua plunged into back-to-back meetings, and Lydia busied herself with prenatal appointments. She also took time to finalize details for an upcoming exhibit at a children's art center, an initiative close to her heart. Though fatigued, Lydia exuded a soft vibrancy that drew admiration from staff and colleagues. But shadows lurked in the background. On a Tuesday morning, Joshua called Lydia unexpectedly from his office. His voice was calm, but behind it lay a flicker of tension. "Vanessa claims there's an urgent matter with one of our charity events," he said. "She wants me to meet her tonight at the venue to finalize last-minute adjustments." Typically, such tasks were delegated to subordinates, and rarely did Joshua handle them personally after hours. Lydia's heart panged with caution, but she kept her tone supportive. "All right, just remember not to let her run you ragged. You haven't rested since we got back." That evening, Joshua returned home much later than usual, face lined with exhaustion. Lydia tried to be patient, focusing on the positive. He still seemed loving, greeted her with a gentle kiss, and asked about the baby's health. But worry gnawed at her. She wondered why this single event demanded so much attention. She also noted that Vanessa texted him more often, though Joshua dismissed it as part of the charitable planning. Meanwhile, gossip in affluent circles ramped up. A leak from someone on the inside hinted that the Morrisons' marriage was in danger, that Lydia was an unfit partner, or even that Joshua was courting another woman in secret. Lily Chen, hearing snippets from acquaintances, phoned Lydia in alarm. "I know you and Joshua have been strong, but the rumors are swirling around. If you need support, let me know. I can help you find out who's spreading this nonsense." Lydia maintained her composure, determined not to lend credence to malicious talk, although, deep inside, anxiety festered. She knew that in the wealthy enclaves they inhabited, rumor could be as deadly as fact. Reputations were made or broken at the slip of a tongue. The irony was not lost on her. She had always been a private, low-profile woman, now forced into the spotlight by mere speculation. The cracks showed themselves more distinctly one afternoon, when Lydia decided, unannounced, to stop by Joshua's office at the foundation. She wanted to invite him to a casual lunch near his workplace. Walking along the corridor, she paused at the threshold of Joshua's door. There, inside, Vanessa stood close to him, pointing at some documents. From Lydia's vantage point, the closeness appeared uncomfortably intimate. Vanessa's hand grazed Joshua's arm as she pointed to a line on the page. Lydia tensed. She was on the verge of stepping in when Joshua stepped away, creating a more appropriate distance. That brief moment of near intimacy, even if it was only visual trickery, rattled Lydia. Vanessa glanced over her shoulder and locked eyes with Lydia. The mistress' lips curled into a subtle smile, one that Lydia perceived as triumphant. Joshua noticed none of this as he turned around to greet his wife, face lighting up with a welcoming grin. They went for lunch, though Lydia felt her appetite vanish. She tried to bring up the subject. "Josh, do you think Vanessa is overstepping boundaries?" He sighed, brushing it off. "It's just her style. She's passionate about her job." Lydia pressed no further, not wanting to sour their moment together, yet her mind whispered warnings. Alone in the penthouse later, Lydia confided in her diary, a habit she had recently revived for solace. She wrote about the confusion swirling within her, the fear that something was slipping beyond her control. She wrote about her unborn child, how desperately she wanted to protect a future that felt threatened by this intangible menace. Tears splattered the pages as she fought the sense of looming betrayal. Lydia realized that while she could not force Joshua to share her suspicions, she could trust her instincts. Outside, dusk draped itself across Beverly Hills. In one of the towers overlooking the city, Vanessa was gazing at her reflection in a mirror. She was preparing for another event, ensuring every strand of hair lay perfectly. There was a silent glee in her expression because she sensed the tension. She thrived on it. The mistress was not satisfied with mild disruption. Her aim was total subversion of Joshua and Lydia's marriage. She had come too far to settle for mere flirtations. Her eyes flickered with determination, already orchestrating her next move to escalate the cracks in the Morrisons' once stable facade. Vanessa decided it was time to escalate her plan. She had sown enough seeds of doubt, carefully woven rumors, and made Joshua reliant on her for philanthropic success. The final step was to create a scenario so convincing, so damning, that Lydia's credibility would crumble. If she could frame the pregnant wife as someone unfit or manipulative, it would undermine Lydia's moral high ground. The objective? To force Joshua into a decision, one that would sever his bond with Lydia and pave a path for Vanessa's ascendancy. The cunning mistress began by collecting personal details about Lydia. She hired a private investigator to dig into Lydia's background, searching for any trace of scandal, old relationships, or financial mishaps that could be weaponized. She rummaged through social media archives, combed through public records, and pried at any loose threads. Her infiltration went deeper than typical jealousy. It was a full-scale infiltration of Lydia's life. When the investigation failed to produce significant dirt, Lydia's history was remarkably clean. Vanessa shifted strategies. She aimed to manufacture incriminating evidence. A malicious plan began to form in her mind, forging documents, manipulating phone conversations, and orchestrating illusions that would frame Lydia as an unfaithful spouse or a reckless gambler. Anything that could make her look disreputable in the eyes of Joshua and their circle. An event presented itself as the perfect cover. The Morrisons were hosting a high-profile charity auction to fund a children's hospital wing. This was the sort of glamorous gathering that would attract celebrities, influential politicians, and media outlets. The night would be a swirl of champagne, high-stakes bidding, and philanthropic pledges. Vanessa planned to strike then, amid the chaos and spotlights. Her accomplice in this charade was an unsuspecting acquaintance named Brian Caldwell, a junior staffer at Joshua's investment firm who found Vanessa mesmerizing. While he lacked the moral compass to question her motives, he possessed the access she needed entry to certain restricted areas of the Morrison systems. Over cocktails one evening, Vanessa manipulated Brian into thinking she was doing a small favor for Joshua, forging an electronic document that required urgent updates in Joshua's philanthropic fund records. From Brian's perspective, he was merely making an innocent change. In reality, Vanessa was planting a digital paper trail that indicated suspicious financial transactions, all pointing back to Lydia. She meticulously inserted references to secret accounts and questionable foreign donations, forging digital signatures to make it appear as though Lydia was siphoning money from the charity to an overseas account under her maiden name, Lydia Green. Of course, the account didn't exist, but the documents certainly made it look real. As a finishing touch, Vanessa planned to leak these falsified documents on the night of the charity auction. The idea was that a few carefully timed anonymous tips to certain tabloids and local authorities would create a scandal at the event. The negative press would swirl, painting Lydia as a fraud who was funneling philanthropic funds for personal gain. Vanessa counted on the shock and indignation to overwhelm Joshua, forcing him to question his wife's integrity. And if Lydia were under investigation, even if it was purely circumstantial, her position as a loving, trustworthy partner would be severely compromised. However, Vanessa was not satisfied with merely tarnishing Lydia's reputation. She yearned to exploit the pregnant wife's vulnerability. A rumor about a delicate medical condition was circulated, suggesting Lydia was under severe emotional stress, possibly leading to erratic behavior. Vanessa's minions planted tidbits of gossip across high society channels, shaping the image of a woman unraveling under the weight of pregnancy and imaginary conspiracies. If Lydia protested her innocence too vehemently, it would only add to the narrative of an unstable spouse who couldn't handle the pressures of an elite lifestyle. All the while, Lydia remained largely oblivious to the lengths Vanessa was willing to go. She sensed hostility, but had no clue of the labyrinthine trap being set. She continued her daily routines, prenatal yoga sessions, planning baby shower details with Lily Chen, finalizing her children's art exhibit. Occasionally she confided in Michael Thompson that Vanessa worried her, but they could only speculate. They lacked concrete proof of wrongdoing. Vanessa refined the details with a cold precision. Her plan would culminate in a single, explosive night, with all eyes on the Morrisons. She anticipated that Joshua, in a swirl of confusion and public pressure, would turn his back on Lydia. The mistress was certain that the media storm would drown out reason, and that Joshua's protectiveness for the brand he had built would trump his loyalty to a wife painted as a criminal. Night by night, Vanessa rehearsed her performance. She pictured the crowd's reaction, the clamor of reporters, the flash of cameras, and how she would console Joshua when his world seemed to collapse. She would be the hero in the aftermath, offering unwavering loyalty and cunning solutions to mitigate the crisis. Once Lydia was exiled from Joshua's life, Vanessa believed nothing would stop her from becoming Mrs. Morrisson. Unaware of the monstrous deception stirring around her, Lydia dreamed of the day she would hold her baby in her arms. Meanwhile, Vanessa awaited the opportunity to detonate her carefully constructed bomb. an attack so devious that it would blindside both Lydia and Joshua, ensuring Vanessa stood by his side as the only dependable presence left. The evening of the charity auction arrived, shimmering with elegance. The grand ballroom at the luxury hotel was a tapestry of gold drapes, plush red carpets, and glimmering chandeliers. Cameras flashed as top-tier guests made their entrances, each greeted by name. The donation items, ranging from rare paintings to vacation packages, displayed an opulence that underscored the seriousness of the fundraiser. This event was meant to fund the expansion of a children's hospital wing, and it was a cause Lydia had championed from the start. Lydia arrived in a flowing emerald gown that accentuated her pregnancy glow. Joshua, in a sleek tuxedo, proudly escorted her, hand resting gently on the small of her back. The two epitomized a harmonious couple, drawing admiration from many in attendance. Few suspected the scheme boiling beneath the surface. Vanessa circulated among the crowd with serpentine grace. Dressed in a sophisticated black gown, she exuded both power and sensuality. Guests assumed she was simply fulfilling her role as the lead organizer, but in truth, she was making her final checks, verifying that the local tabloid contact had indeed received the forged documents, ensuring that the anonymous tip to law enforcement was timed to coincide with the highlight of the auction, and scanning the room for any potential disruptions to her plan. The evening unfolded smoothly at first. Joshua delivered a moving speech about the importance of funding better pediatric care. Lydia also gave a short address on the significance of art therapy for hospitalized children. Applause filled the venue, and bidding commenced. Artwork after artwork sold at prices that would bolster the hospital's future. The atmosphere sparkled with a philanthropic spirit that made Lydia's heart swell. Somewhere in the middle of the auctions, a buzz erupted at the back of the ballroom. A few phones chimed with breaking news alerts. Hushed whispers rippled through the crowd. Journalists, who had been politely documenting the event, now hurried to check their devices. Vanessa felt her pulse quicken. The moment had arrived. A couple of reporters approached the stage, capturing Lydia and Joshua in tense conversation. One man in a dark suit, identified by a lanyard from a popular celebrity tabloid, marched up to Joshua. "Mr. Morrisson, do you have any comment on the allegations that your wife has been embezzling funds meant for charity?" Gasps scattered throughout the crowd. Lydia froze, her eyes wide with shock and confusion. At first, she could barely process the question. Embezzling? She had done no such thing. Before Joshua could respond, another reporter chimed in, brandishing a smartphone. "We've received documents that indicate bank transfers in Lydia Green's name to an overseas account. Care to explain?" A flurry of camera clicks and heated murmurings followed. Lydia tried to speak but found her throat tight. "What? That's impossible," she finally managed, cheeks flushing. Her heart raced, her body shaking with panic. Standing in the wings, Vanessa feigned horror, covering her mouth delicately. Then she rushed forward, placing a hand on Lydia's shoulder in a show of support. "This must be a misunderstanding," she declared to the reporters, her voice dripping with concern. "Lydia is a champion for this cause. There's no way she'd do something like this." However, that very display of sympathy only fueled the narrative that Lydia needed a defender in what seemed like a murky financial scheme. The confusion escalated. Some guests gawked with disbelief, others whispered about whether this scandal could be true. After all, the documents were so detailed. More than a few seemed convinced by the evidence on the tabloids' websites. Joshua, momentarily stunned, felt the glare of the cameras intensify. Then a representative of the local authorities, two plainclothes officers, actually stepped forward, quietly requesting that Lydia accompany them for questioning. That was the final blow. The respectable veneer of the evening shattered. Sensing Lydia's trembling, Joshua positioned himself protectively at her side. "There must be a mistake," he insisted. "This is ridiculous. My wife is innocent." Despite his attempts to shield her, Lydia had to go with the officers to clarify the matter. The onlookers parted like waves, some sympathetic, others overtly judgmental. All the while, Vanessa watched with a cool gaze. She experienced a momentary thrill of triumph, certain that her plan had taken hold. If the wife was publicly disgraced, Joshua would be forced to reconsider the marriage. His brand, his reputation, demanded distance from scandal. In Vanessa's mind, it was only a matter of time before the fracture became irreparable. She waited for Joshua to lash out in anger or to crumble under pressure. But something unexpected happened. Instead of distancing himself, Joshua clasped Lydia's hand and followed her to the awaiting car. He insisted on accompanying his pregnant wife to the police station, ignoring any pleas from the event staff to remain and salvage the fundraiser. Everyone else stood there, rooted to the spot, cameras capturing the disarray. But the Morrisons left together, heads held high in an unspoken statement of unity. Vanessa's flawless plan encountered its first kink. She had banked on Joshua reacting with outrage or desperation, severing ties with Lydia on the spot to save face. Yet her calculations did not account for the depth of Joshua's devotion. As the swirl of scandal enveloped the event, Vanessa pondered her next move. She had set the trap, but Lydia had not yet lost Joshua's trust. Would the scandal escalate enough to drive them apart, or had Vanessa underestimated the strength of their bond? At the police station, Lydia sat with trembling hands, giving her statement to a detective who tried, with a practiced neutrality, to sort fact from fiction. Joshua stood close by, exuding both tension and unwavering support. The swirl of the night's events had left them breathless. Just hours before, they had been raising funds for sick children. Now they found themselves under harsh fluorescent lights, answering allegations of embezzlement. The detective presented the damning documents. Each line read like a meticulously crafted ledger of wrongdoing. Unauthorized transactions, suspicious deposits into an overseas account apparently under Lydia's maiden name, Lydia Green. The detective drilled Lydia on every detail. "Did you have any knowledge of these transactions? Have you ever opened an account in this particular Caribbean bank? What is your relationship to the Foundation's treasury?" Lydia shook her head vehemently, tears pooling in her eyes. "No, I've never done anything like this. I never opened such an account. I swear I'm innocent." Joshua, arms crossed defensively, added, "We'll have our lawyers on this immediately. My wife would never betray our charity's mission." Yet behind his confident words, a sliver of uncertainty flickered, not in Lydia's innocence but in the unstoppable power of false evidence. He had seen how reputations could be destroyed by fabricated documents in the court of public opinion. The questioning took hours. By morning, Lydia was released, pending further investigation, but the damage was done. Reporters swarmed outside the police station, snapping photos and shouting intrusive questions. Lydia flinched at the barrage of camera flashes. Joshua did his best to shield her. Once they climbed into their car, Lydia sank against the seat, her eyes filled with tears of shock and exhaustion. They arrived home to discover a media circus out front. Journalists camped on the sidewalks, cameras rolling. Rather than escalate the scene, Joshua directed their driver to circle around the back entrance. Security personnel helped them slip inside the penthouse. Once the door shut, the gravity of the situation crashed down on them. Lydia's shoulders shook as she sobbed softly. Joshua sat beside her, wrapping her in his arms. "We'll prove you're innocent," he said, with a calm intensity. "I'm hiring a specialized team first thing in the morning. We have to find the source of these forgeries." That night, neither of them slept well. Lydia's mind churned with anxiety, worried not just about her reputation, but also about the stress. This chaos placed on her pregnancy. She felt an ache low in her abdomen, a persistent twinge. She told herself it was merely tension, but it frightened her enough to lie awake, clutching her belly, praying the baby was safe. Meanwhile, Vanessa Pierce observed from a distance, quietly reveling in the swirl of accusations. Her phone brimmed with messages, some from curious acquaintances, others from members of the press fishing for more leads. She responded with calculated vagueness, insinuating that she was as surprised as anyone, making sure not to appear too eager. Her aim was to nurture the notion that she, too, was a victim of Lydia's alleged betrayal, someone who had worked tirelessly on the charity, only to be blindsided by scandal. However, her satisfaction soured when she learned of Joshua's unwavering support for Lydia. Instead of condemnation, the millionaire had stood by his wife's side through the entire ordeal. Her frustration mounted, and an unsettling question gnawed at her. Did she need to escalate her plan? Sensing that more extreme measures might be required, she started crafting a fallback scheme to cast further doubt on Lydia, one that would paint her not just as a thief, but potentially as emotionally unstable, dangerous even. The next day, Lydia and Joshua sat with Michael Thompson and a digital forensics expert named Melissa Grant. In the private setting of Joshua's study, Lydia detailed everything she knew, from the first hints of sabotage to the moment the scandal broke. Michael laid out the legal ramifications. If we don't disprove this quickly, Lydia could face charges. The authorities are already investigating. Public opinion will be harsh. Melissa tapped her laptop thoughtfully. These forgeries are sophisticated, but every digital document carries a fingerprint. If this was orchestrated, we'll find anomalies. Over the next few hours, she meticulously scoured data logs and transaction records, searching for any sign of manipulation. In the hush that followed, Lydia stared at Joshua. "I don't understand who would do this," she murmured. "Or why?" Joshua gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. "We'll figure it out. Whoever orchestrated this, they did it with surgical precision." He looked over at Michael. "Could it be someone from the inside?" Michael shrugged. "We can't rule that out. The official records are stored in secure servers. Someone with access had to plant the data." Lydia's gaze shifted as realization flickered. She recalled her lingering suspicion of Vanessa, how the event organizer had grown ever more enmeshed in Joshua's philanthropic operations. The thought felt bizarre. Vanessa was known for her efficiency and dedication. Why would she sabotage the very charities she managed? And how would she benefit from framing Lydia? Lydia didn't want to believe that this was the extent of Vanessa's cunning, but something in her gut urged her to speak. What about Vanessa Pierce? "She's had a hand in nearly everything for the past few months." Michael nodded slowly. "I considered that possibility. I've asked around about her, but aside from minor concerns about her sudden rise in event management, there's nothing conclusive." At the mention of Vanessa's name, Joshua appeared uneasy. "She's been vital to a lot of our fundraising. It's hard to see what she'd gain by tearing it all down." Lydia, bracing herself, asked, "Could she be after you?" Her gaze locked with Joshua's. For a moment, neither spoke. The question hovered in the air, pregnant with implications. Michael cleared his throat discreetly, allowing the couple a private moment. "I've never given her reason to think that," Joshua finally said, though his tone held a note of uncertainty. They decided not to jump to conclusions. The priority was clearing Lydia's name. The deeper they delved, however, the more Lydia feared that the trap was elaborate. If Vanessa were indeed behind this, she wouldn't stop at a single blow. As the tension thickened, Lydia's protective instincts ignited. She wasn't just defending herself, she was defending her unborn child and the future she had fought to build. Under the unrelenting glare of media scrutiny and potential legal consequences, Lydia found her inner resilience. She would not be cowed by lies. If Vanessa had pulled the strings, Lydia was determined to cut them once and for all. The following days turned into a quagmire of accusations and unyielding investigations. Overnight, Lydia's name had become fodder for tabloids and social media speculation. In upscale circles, hushed debates raged about whether the claims were real. Some insisted that Lydia was incapable of such a crime, while others floated theories that the quiet wife had turned cunning once pregnant. Vanessa seized on the swirling rumors, adding subtle layers of doubt whenever she could. At a private lunch with influential patrons, she sighed dramatically, "I'm devastated. I truly believed in Lydia's vision for these causes. Now, I don't know what to think." Her performance was carefully calibrated, neither too vehement in condemnation nor too quick to defend. She wanted people to see her as the wounded accomplice, someone who had poured her passion into philanthropic work only to be blindsided. Meanwhile, Lydia stayed mostly in the penthouse to avoid the omnipresent paparazzi. The stress was taking a toll on her health. She suffered bouts of dizziness, and her obstetrician advised her to rest, warning that high levels of anxiety were not conducive to a healthy pregnancy. But Lydia couldn't simply lie still while her reputation was torn apart. She spent hours reviewing documents with Michael, fielding calls from philanthropic committees, and comforting donors who were unsure whether to maintain their support. Through it all, Joshua's steady presence gave her courage. One afternoon, Vanessa paid an unexpected visit to the Morrisson penthouse. Lydia initially bristled when their housekeeper, Anita Gomez, announced that Vanessa was waiting in the foyer. Joshua, who was in the middle of a call with Michael Thompson, paused to exchange a look of caution with Lydia. "Should I ask her to leave?" he whispered. Lydia steadied herself. "No," she said, setting her shoulders. "I want to see what she has to say." Vanessa walked in, wearing a concerned expression that, to Lydia, seemed rehearsed. "I wanted to see how you're holding up," she began. "I know these accusations must be tearing you apart." Lydia nodded stiffly, stepping aside so Vanessa could enter the lavish living room. Joshua hung back, arms folded. "Vanessa, I'm surprised you came," Lydia said, voice tight. "I couldn't ignore what's happening," Vanessa replied gently. "We've worked together on so many events. I just want to support you and Joshua during this tough time." A moment passed in loaded silence. Joshua finally spoke. "We appreciate that, but right now we're trying to figure out how someone was able to manipulate our charity's records." He left the sentence hanging, eyes locked on Vanessa for any reaction. She met his gaze with a feigned empathy. "I wish I had answers," she said softly. Lydia's pulse raced. She recognized the subtle manipulation. Vanessa was positioning herself as a friend, an ally. Still, Lydia forced herself to remain calm. "You've had access to many of our systems, and you've worked with staff who have direct access to accounts. Do you know anyone who might hold a grudge or have a reason to slander us?" she asked pointedly. If Vanessa was rattled, she hid it well. "I'm not aware of anyone specifically, but in circles like ours, who knows what grudges people harbor? If I learn anything, I'll let you know." She cast a sorrowful glance at Lydia's belly, as though pitying the pregnant woman caught in scandal. "I truly hope this resolves soon, Lydia. You and your baby deserve peace." As quickly as she had arrived, Vanessa departed. Joshua took a deep breath. "She's either the best actress I've ever seen, or she genuinely knows nothing." Lydia frowned. "She's lying, Josh. I feel it. There's something off about her demeanor. If she's behind this, she's not going to confess." He nodded, tension etched in his face. "Then we have to prove it." But even Joshua's loyalty came under strain. Days later, rumors escalated further this time, alleging not just financial impropriety, but a hidden affair. According to the tabloids, Lydia had an old flame with whom she'd conspired to funnel charity funds. The allegations were laughable in their invention, but the incessant negative press battered Joshua's standing. Investors in his businesses questioned his judgment, and board members subtly pressured him to distance the firm from Lydia's predicament. Late one night, after another day of stressful meetings, Joshua paced the living room while Lydia looked on worriedly. "They're all telling me to cut ties," he said bitterly. "They want me to publicly denounce you to protect the company." Lydia's eyes filled with tears. "And will you?" He turned to her, anger and heartbreak flashing on his face. "How can you ask that?" "Of course not, but the pressure is enormous. I'm losing control of the narrative. If we can't prove your innocence soon, the damage could be irreversible for us, for our child." She walked closer, placing a trembling hand on his chest. "Josh, I'm scared, but you're all I have. The truth will come out eventually. We just need time." He closed his eyes, trying to keep his composure. "Time we don't have." Their marriage was tested not by any personal failing or real betrayal, but by an invisible string of malicious rumors that no one could definitively trace. Every conversation felt heavy with unspoken fears. Every time the phone rang, Lydia braced for worse news. And in the swirling tempest of accusations, neither realized how close Vanessa was to winning. Seated alone in her own apartment, Vanessa studied the headlines, feeling triumphant. She still needed one more push, one final blow that would drive a wedge between Joshua and Lydia for good. She had carefully planted seeds, suggesting Lydia had a secret lover, but the reaction wasn't as explosive as she had hoped. The pair remained annoyingly united. Vanessa knew she needed something more personal, more catastrophic. She tapped her nails on the kitchen counter, lips curving into a cunning smile. There was an old saying, "A cornered animal is the most dangerous." She had cornered Lydia, but the pregnant wife still had a powerful ally in Joshua. Vanessa resolved that if she wanted to force a divorce, she might have to put Lydia in a position so dire that Joshua would have no choice but to leave her no matter how much he loved her. Vanessa's final move needed to be swift, devastating, and irrevocable. Realizing that mere gossip and forged documents were insufficient to break the Morrisons' bond, she sought a more visceral strike, something that would cast Lydia as a direct threat to those around her. A plan formed in her mind, involving a carefully orchestrated confrontation that would appear to result in violence. She spent days scrutinizing the Morrisons' schedule, waiting for an opportune moment. The perfect chance arose when Lydia was due for a routine medical checkup. According to the clinic's protocols, she would likely be alone in the examination room, with Joshua waiting outside. The plan: corner Lydia in a place of vulnerability, provoke her into a heated encounter, and then manipulate evidence to make it appear as though Lydia had attacked her while pregnant and unstable. It was a twisted gambit, but Vanessa was past the point of conscience. She felt invincible, having evaded detection thus far. The forged documents remained under investigation, but no one suspected her. Meanwhile, the rumored affair pinned on Lydia was not gaining as much traction as she had hoped, though it still sowed distrust in the public eye. Now, all she needed was a dramatic incident that would sever the last threads of Joshua's loyalty. That Wednesday, Lydia arrived at her obstetrician's office. Joshua, delayed by an urgent business call, promised to join her soon. The waiting room was quiet, lined with pastel chairs and gently humming air purifiers. Lydia, feeling heavy and sore, clutched her medical papers, longing for Joshua's comforting presence. The door opened, and the nurse called her in. Inside, Lydia settled onto the examination bed. The doctor greeted her warmly. "We'll do a quick ultrasound to check on your baby's growth," he explained. The soft whooshing sound of the ultrasound machine soon filled the room, accompanied by the rhythmic pulse of Lydia's unborn child. Relief swept through her despite the chaos in her life. This precious heartbeat represented hope, As the examination concluded, the doctor stepped out briefly to update her file. Lydia took a moment to compose herself, nibbling on a piece of ginger candy to stave off morning sickness. Then, without warning, the door burst open. Vanessa stood in the doorway, face twisted in a mask of feigned distress. Lydia jolted upright. "What are you doing here?" Her voice quivered with unease. Vanessa placed a hand over her heart, stepping inside. "I'm sorry to intrude," she breathed, "but I heard about your appointment and needed to talk to you privately. I'm concerned about you, Lydia." Alarm bells rang in Lydia's mind. She glanced toward the corridor, hoping the doctor or nurse would return. "This isn't an appropriate time or place," Lydia said, trying to keep her composure. "We can talk later." Vanessa's eyes hardened. "I don't think you understand how serious this is. Everyone is concerned that your stress levels might harm the baby, or that your erratic behavior could cause an incident." Heat flared in Lydia's cheeks. "Erratic? I've been framed, Vanessa, and I suspect you know more than you're letting on." She struggled to keep her voice down. A flicker of cold triumph passed over Vanessa's face. She stepped closer, invading Lydia's personal space. "Believe what you want, but do you really think Joshua can carry on with this mess? The boards are turning against him. Investors are backing out. Sooner or later, he'll do what's necessary for the sake of his business. And that means leaving you." Lydia's heart pounded. "Get out," she hissed. "Before I call security." She placed a protective hand over her belly, instincts on high alert. Vanessa's response was unexpected. She grabbed Lydia's wrist, a gesture both forceful and menacing. Lydia gasped, panic gripping her. She tried to yank her arm free, terrified of falling or being hurt, especially in her condition. "You see," Vanessa hissed, "this is what you've been reduced to: paranoia, desperation. You're hurting everyone around you. If you really cared about Joshua, you'd step aside." Unable to contain her fury, Lydia pushed Vanessa's hand away. In that moment, Vanessa staggered backward dramatically, colliding with a tray of medical instruments. Clatter and chaos erupted, and suddenly the doctor and a nurse rushed in, their eyes widening at the scene. Vanessa, holding her arm, feigned agony. "She shoved me," she cried, tears welling. "She's dangerous. I came to see if she was okay, and she attacked me." Lydia's mouth dropped open, indignation flaring. "She grabbed me first," she exclaimed, but the doctor seemed momentarily stunned, and the nurse was more concerned with picking up scattered instruments. Moments later, Joshua arrived, alerted by the commotion. He took in the scene, Vanessa on the floor, nursing a bruised arm, Lydia standing there, visibly shaken and furious. "What the hell happened?" he demanded, voice tense. Vanessa mustered a trembling sob. "I was just worried about Lydia's health and tried to talk to her privately, but she overreacted." Lydia clung to Joshua's arm. "That's a lie!" she cried. "She invaded my space. She tried to hurt me and the baby. She's framing me again, Josh." Vanessa cringed in mock pain, tears streaming as the doctor helped her up. "I'm only concerned," she repeated weakly, playing her role as a misunderstood victim. The scene ignited chaos in the hallway. Staff members asked if they needed security, while Joshua tried to calm Lydia. The tension was palpable, and passers-by whispered as rumors soared. Within minutes, local gossip websites posted headlines about a pregnant Lydia Morrisson allegedly assaulting a concerned friend. Once again, Vanessa had crafted a scenario that cast Lydia in a damaging light. Joshua was visibly torn, overwhelmed by the conflicting narratives. He knew Lydia's temperament gentle, rational, and he also understood Vanessa was dramatic. Yet, with every new scandal, his professional world teetered closer to collapse, and his personal life descended further into upheaval. For Lydia, the immediate concern was her baby. Her obstetrician insisted she get some rest while they ran a quick check to ensure the baby remained unharmed by the confrontation. Lydia clenched Joshua's hand, tears rolling down her cheeks. "She's lying," she whispered. "I swear to you," she cornered me. Joshua pressed a reassuring kiss to her forehead. "I believe you," he murmured, though the strain in his eyes was unmistakable. Meanwhile, Vanessa left the clinic, triumph buzzing through her veins. She had thrown another devastating punch, orchestrating a public meltdown that reinforced the image of Lydia as unstable and dangerous. It was only a matter of time, Vanessa believed, before Joshua reached his breaking point and left Lydia's pregnancy be damned. Then, Vanessa would swoop in to comfort him, offering stability in a tumultuous world. In her haste for victory, Vanessa failed to notice one watchful observer, a nurse, who had seen the entire confrontation through the partially open door. A nurse who remembered the small detail of Vanessa grabbing Lydia's arm first. She had no stake in this drama, but something about Vanessa's overblown reaction struck her as staged. Concerned for Lydia's well-being, she quietly resolved to step forward if the authorities started asking questions. Though Lydia was exhausted and frightened, a small spark of hope remained. Fate, it seemed, would not let Vanessa's web of lies remain untangled forever. The next morning, Lydia awakened in her bedroom, shadows of the previous day's confrontation still clinging to her thoughts. She felt the baby move gently within her, a reminder of what she was fighting for. Nearby, Joshua busied himself on the phone, orchestrating a crisis meeting of lawyers, PR agents, and key allies to address the newest incident. Despite his unwavering presence, Lydia could see the toll on him. He looked older, burdened by the avalanche of scandal. She slipped out of bed, placing a hand on his shoulder. "We'll find a way out of this," she whispered. He cradled her hand in his, desperation flickering in his eyes. "We have to," he said simply. "I won't lose you or our child." Little did they know help was about to arrive from an unexpected source. That afternoon, Michael Thompson called with an urgent update. "A nurse from your obstetrician's clinic reached out," he said. "She claims to have witnessed the entire confrontation with Vanessa. She's willing to make a statement that Vanessa was the aggressor." Lydia's heart soared at the news. "That's exactly what happened. She grabbed me first." "But how do we prove it?" Michael replied excitedly. "There may also be CCTV footage in the hallway. The nurse says the cameras sometimes capture glimpses inside the examination rooms. I've already asked the clinic for access." Within hours, Michael confirmed that he had procured partial security camera footage. Though the angle was limited, it clearly showed Vanessa entering the examination room uninvited, reaching out to grab Lydia's wrist, and Lydia's ensuing defensive shove. The final frames depicted Vanessa's theatrical stumble. Coupled with the nurse's testimony, it was potent evidence of Vanessa's deceit. Simultaneously, Melissa Grant, the digital forensics expert, had breakthroughs in her investigation. "I've traced suspicious logins to a device associated with Brian Caldwell, a junior staffer at your firm," she announced. "He accessed the Foundation's secure records around the same time the forged documents were created." Michael pressed her for details, and Melissa explained, "There's also an external IP address that leads back to an apartment building where Vanessa Pierce is listed as a tenant. It appears they collaborated." Over the next 2 days, Michael and Melissa built a formidable case. They uncovered email communications that Vanessa had deleted but were still retrievable from the server's backup. The messages revealed Vanessa guiding Brian on which files to alter. The tone of the emails strongly hinted at romantic or manipulative undertones, Vanessa dangling affection or professional favors to get Brian's compliance. When presented with this evidence, Brian Caldwell cracked under pressure. Confronted by Joshua's legal team, he confessed the entire scheme, forging documents to frame Lydia, funneling them to tabloids, and orchestrating anonymous tips to law enforcement. "I didn't know she intended to ruin Miss Morrisson entirely," he whined. "Vanessa said it was a personal vendetta. She told me it would make the firm stronger in the long run." He looked broken, acutely aware he was headed for criminal charges. Armed with that confession, Michael wasted no time reporting Vanessa to the authorities. In a final poetic twist, law enforcement officers arrived at one of Vanessa's glitzy charity planning sessions to arrest her. She resisted, hysterically shouting that she was innocent, that Lydia had manipulated everyone. But the evidence was overwhelming. News of Vanessa's arrest spread like wildfire. Overnight, headlines shifted from demonizing Lydia to a shocking tale of betrayal. Morrisson family vindicated, Mistress's plot exposed, Vanessa Pierce charged with fraud and assault. The philanthropic community, previously thrown into turmoil, rallied around Lydia. Messages of apology and support poured in from those who had doubted her. Even the most skeptical began to see that Lydia was no villain, but rather the victim of a cunning saboteur. Sitting together in their penthouse, Lydia and Joshua watched the media coverage in disbelief. Their nightmare was finally dissolving. Lydia's name was cleared, and the child she carried would not be born under a cloud of scandal. Joshua turned to Lydia, tears glinting in his eyes. "I'm sorry I ever let any of this come between us," he murmured. "You stayed strong when I almost gave in to the pressure." She squeezed his hand, smiling through her own tears. "We made it through," she said gently. "Now we can truly focus on our future." They privately visited the children's hospital wing, which was nearing completion, the project that had once been overshadowed by lies. Standing in the bright corridors, filled with murals and child-friendly designs, Lydia felt a profound sense of relief. "This is what really matters," she said, placing a hand on her belly. "Not the rumors or the social politics, but the good we can do for others and the family we're building." In the days that followed, Vanessa's downfall was swift. With evidence of her role in forging documents and orchestrating Lydia's public humiliation, prosecutors built a solid case. Brian Caldwell testified against her, providing the final nail in the coffin. The philanthropic circle exiled Vanessa, and her name became synonymous with scandal and deceit. For Lydia and Joshua, the path forward was one of healing and renewal. The baby's arrival approached, a joyful beacon after the storm. Even as they prepared for parenthood, the Morrissons didn't forget the lessons of betrayal. They tightened their inner circle, trusting only those who had proven their loyalty during the crisis. Michael Thompson stayed on as the family's most trusted advisor, while Lily Chen helped coordinate a triumphant baby shower. The love that Lydia and Joshua shared had been tested to its limits, yet it emerged stronger, proving that no matter how meticulously crafted a trap might be, unwavering devotion and the truth could eventually break it apart. Deception may be powerful, but so is unyielding love. Even in the face of vicious rumors and elaborate framing, Lydia's courage, fueled by Joshua's steadfast devotion, ripped the mask off a conniving mistress who nearly destroyed everything. When cunning plans crumble under the weight of truth, hope and loyalty shine through every crack. And now, the Morrisons stand as living proof that genuine bonds can withstand the fiercest storms. Ever wonder if love could conquer betrayal like this in real life? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you were moved by Lydia's bravery and Joshua's unwavering faith, show your support by hitting the like button. Spread this story to friends who might need a reminder that real love can triumph over even the darkest lies. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss another gripping tale that tests the limits of trust, determination, and heart.